Welcome to the podcast series, Unshakable Strength, Empowering Black Women, sponsored by the Empower Project. The Empower Project is a partnership between Howard University and Health HIV, sponsored by the PACE grant from Gilead Sciences. The Girlfriends podcast is dedicated to addressing the unshakable strength shown and the unique challenges faced by Black women and girls, particularly in the context of HIV prevention. We will explore important topics such as sexual health, mental well-being, access to healthcare, and strategies for HIV prevention tailored to the needs of Black women and girls. We invite you to listen to our other episodes that explore important topics like Beyond the Role, caregiving, self-care, and HIV prevention, and so many more that are already available for you. Today's episode is exploring faith, sexuality, and empowerment for Black women. In this powerful episode, we will explore the rich and often complex intersection of faith, sexuality, and Black womanhood. From navigating desire and spiritual values to confronting cultural expectations and dismantling shame, this episode creates space for honest reflection and healing. We also shine a light on how HIV awareness and prevention play a vital role in this dialogue, challenging stigma, centering pleasure, and affirming that Black women can honor both their faith and their sexual health without compromise. Today, I have the honor of introducing my guest, Ms. Henrietta Croswell. Henrietta Croswell is the owner and principal consultant of HC Consulting Solutions, LLC. Previously, Henrietta has overseen a wide portfolio in health, including HIV, sexual and reproductive health, care coordination, training, and behavioral health. For more than 20 years, she has been involved in her local community church. Henrietta also has a bachelor's in psychology and a master's of public health in community health education. Good morning, Henrietta, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me today, Amy. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. It is a pleasure. So we're just going to dive right in, if that's all right. And I'm going to just open up by asking you, what are some of the most common cultural or religious messages that Black women receive about sex, desire, and even morality?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, sometimes, this has been my experience as well. I think that sometimes there is that shame in terms of when it comes to how do you balance your faith as well as sometimes just a natural desire when it comes around sex. And I think sometimes it's very forbidden to even think that. So I think there's that piece of it that comes when we talk about some of those religious messages that, oh, you're not supposed to feel that way, or you need to follow biblically in terms of what your faith is. And I think it's a hard balance, and I think that sometimes these messages can be very conflicting for some Black women. And I think that there's also that piece of, am I supposed to feel this way? Am I not? I do still want to honor my faith and believe, but at the same time, we all have in terms of in our sexual being. So therefore, there's that conflicting concern and messages that you sometimes get from in terms of religious messages that you're not supposed to feel this way. You're not supposed to have these, desires or wants or what have you.
Wow. So I'm hearing shame, I'm hearing conflict, I'm hearing not supposed to feel. So how have these messages shaped the way that Black women approach relationships and sexual health and even HIV prevention?
Yeah, Amy, I think just based off of my own, not only professional experience in terms of what I've heard in the field and relationships that I've built over the years, is that I think it does allow sometimes that inner feeling of, not, I don't want to say bitterness, but sometimes that place of, how do I balance that? Is this kind of like uneasiness? So therefore it makes it a bit more challenging for Black women to to feel that, where do I go from here? How do I then be able to, navigate through relationships that I do want to have, but also figuring out, do I still, honor my faith, my beat, my beliefs, my spirituality? So it does make it challenging, right? And I think sometimes there are not spaces of safety to really kind of talk about this, because I think that there's sometimes that inner um, kind of like not only conflict, but also that we don't really want to talk about it, right? I rather just keep it to myself. Maybe there's not other people feeling the same way. So then it makes it difficult to really feel open to kind of express and want and, and navigate some of those relationships that can be challenging at times.
So in those spaces, when it comes to the faith leaders within these faith communities, or the individuals who are in power in these faith groups, so what role can those faith leaders, or even just the faith communities in general, play in dismantling these stigmas and changing that narrative?
Yeah, when you mention HIV, when it comes to HIV prevention and then kind of dismantling those messages, I think it has to be kind of like couples with when we talk about overall health, right? Sometimes when we think about health, and things have changed over the years. When we talked about physical health versus mental health and behavior health, now we're valuing that. But I think we also have to understand that we also have to include sexual health as part of that message. Being open to be able to have conversations like that. And I think there are opportunities and spaces within the faith community to be able to have that. How do we incorporate, um, you know, in terms of prevention practices, awareness, education when it comes to HIV prevention, when it comes to sexual health, the same way that we wanted to talk about our physical health, such as obesity, diabetes, hypertension, chronic conditions that tend to be a bit more prevalent in our communities. How do we couple that with also saying, well, let's talk about sexual health. Let's create these spaces. So I think there could be opportunities where um, we could, provide spaces where, as Black women, as a community, to be able to do that. And that could be anywhere from being able to um, connect with local community organizations, other healthcare organizations in the community. Um, it could be also at, other convenings or conventions and meetings that may take place in the faith-based community. Um, that could be opportunities to be able to talk and about this. So I think that partnership with faith-based leaders and other members within the congregation, or even if it's someone who's not a part of a congregation, how can they be able to kind of open those doors for opportunities? And I think those are I think there's definitely room and space to be able to do that.
Oh my goodness, yes, I agree with you. I love that you say open doors and create the space, because I know
Hmm.
around the country so many faith groups have opened their doors. They've become HIV testing sites. Many churches will have, informational brochures in their lobbies. But I love the way you say it. It's really about just making space and working in collaboration, right? And working in community. That's awesome. That's beautiful. So
Yeah.
to the person listening, what's one action step any listener can take today to both honor their faith and their sexual health?
Mhm. Yeah. I think that really being able to kind of also listen to yourself and know what it is that you want as an individual. I think many times there are certain expectations that we may have of either faith leaders, faith communities, but it's also understanding what it is that you want for yourself. So I think that's the first action step. Really understanding what it is that you need and want for yourself. I think the second piece is just like what I shared. those who may be involved in their local communities or who may be connected with other organizations within their communities, uh, be able to kind of maybe step out of that box to initiate that conversation, or to be able to say, hey, could this be an opportunity to convene, a number of women in the community, um, or even in your local community, faith community that you go to, and figure out ways of how you can create a space of and of conversation, of uh, and also just kind of like a discussion point, because I think sometimes it just starts from one conversation that you can have with one person. So maybe that's one other step that you can take. And I think the third thing that I would add in terms of action step would be um, also kind of being realistic in terms of what that expectation is, in regards to what that next could be for you and also for the folks within your community as well.
Love it. I love it. So it's all very positive stuff that we're talking about. And I think it's great starting steps to really bring in faith and bring in that intersection of sexuality and faith, because, you don't have one without the other. They're all intricately combined. So, Henrietta, what gives you hope about the future of this conversation and many other conversations in this realm? What gives you hope about the future for Black women?
I think what gives me hope is that you have seen the trend in terms of how a number of Black women, or even women in general, who have been more open in regards to their faith. And you see that online, you see that in many um, spaces in terms of communities and organizations. So I think there's a level of comfortability in terms of folks coming, be more open to be able to do that. Figuring out what that means for you and your specific local community is what definitely you have to figure out. But I think that gives me hope. I think there's also the diversity of voices that we have within the space as well. So I think being able to have different types of mediums and forums to be able to have these initial discussions, I think is also an opportunity, as well as hope, in terms of being able to know and feel and sense that, you know, that there are others like myself and other women who may be in the same space in regards to this very important topic.
That is phenomenal. And just, I love everything about that. And I love the positive spin and the perspective of we need to talk about this, and there's hope for the future that we're going to continue to talk about it. So that's awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you so much, Henrietta, for sharing your powerful insights and lived experience and for shedding light on the critical intersection of faith, sexuality, and Black womanhood. To our listeners, thank you for tuning into this episode of our podcast. We hope you found the conversation both moving and informative. Be sure to join us for many more important conversations, and remember to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us reach more listeners. Until next time, have a great day.